recording. Good, good, good. Okay, so alrighty, I'm just gonna do this for now. Welcome, Hannah. I'll just ask you to pop yourself on mute. Thanks, darling. And I'll just make this nice and big, and hopefully you guys can all see this. Beautiful. Oh, and I may just as well take a moment to just spotlight myself over here. Okay, so, today's all about talking about elevating your practice. So for those of you who have attended similar sessions like this before, I think it's a really wonderful reminder. For those of you who haven't, I think there's going to be a lot that you can get out of it. You'll be picking up a lot of these skills and things along the way in your actual sessions as well. However, we cannot be reminded enough, myself included, on some of the tools and tricks and strategies that we can use to practice more efficiently and more effectively. So first thing, we're not just talking about playing the piano, but we're talking about learning music in general here. So I wonder if we could just take a moment to find the chat function. For those of you who don't know where the chat function is, you should be able to find the chat down the bottom, hopefully, of your screen if you're tuning in on a computer. Otherwise, on the iPad, I think it's somewhere up in the top right corner. But I want you guys to just take a moment to pop in the chat for me where you the other skills that you think are involved in learning music, aside from just learning pieces and learning your instrument, but learning music in general. So can you just pop some of these things in the chat? And I'm just curious to see your perspective about what you think is involved in learning music, as well as just learning pieces. Like, what are some of the other skills and ancillary skills that we need to learn to be a well-rounded musician? So find that chat for me, pop in your ideas about what you think, whether it's things like theory and notes and harmony. Excellent. That's a great start. Let's see what else. Memory skills, listening, yes. Listening, yes. That is the most important one, because music is something we are designed to consume through these ears of ours. It's fantastic. Any more ideas? Persistence. Oh, that was fantastic. I wish I would have added that to my next slide, but I will endeavor to do that next time. Yes, persistence is definitely one of those kind of ancillary skills. I reckon patience would go along with that too. They're kind of one and the same in a lot of ways. Yeah, any other ideas? Analysis, understanding. Yeah, that's it. That's very much in the harmony boat. Any other ideas? Tone and rhythm. Yep, very good. Anything else? Focus. Yes, absolutely. Resilience. Love it. All these words are fantastic. Anything else? You give it a few minutes. I'm loving these answers. Understanding how you learn. Yep. Auditory, visual. Yep. Ear training is definitely up there with that. Yeah, that's a really big one. All right, a couple more and then I'm going to move on. I'm very curious to see what else you guys think. Outside of just learning pieces, using your ears, all of that kind of extra brain stuff around focusing and resilience and patience and all of that. No, okay, moving on. So we have lots of other things, other skills that we can learn over here. So things like sight reading is its own skill, ear training we touched on, being able to improvise, make up your own music, be able to write that down if you wanted to, or record that in a composition and create your own music. Obviously things like technique that will enable us to be able to play things smoother and easier and quicker if we need to play it fast necessarily, or more expressively, just teaching the body how to be able to make the sounds that we're hoping to make. Things like chords and harmony, of course, being able to understand how pieces are put together and which notes we would choose for that, understanding the theory behind that, being able to perform confidently, whether that be for one person or a whole concert hall, being able to collaborate. Can you play with other musicians? Can you play with other pianists, even if you're going to do a duet, or can you play along with a track? Can you collaborate in some way and interact with someone outside of yourself? Listening was a big one that was already mentioned, and there's obviously the main skills that we probably put most of our time and energy focusing into, such as learning new pieces and reviewing old pieces. So out of that list there, back to the chat, if you guys could type in for me another kind of skill aside from this corner of learning new pieces and reviewing old pieces, out of these sorts of skills that you think you would like to kind of focus on a little bit more, even in the next few months of your lessons. I'd be really curious to see what sort of other things kind of spark your interest outside of obviously just the next piece. So again, just find that chat for us and pop it in. Really curious. Yeah, memory, that's a good one. Absolutely. What else we got in here? And it's interesting, you all have your certain strengths and things that you've probably spent a lot more time, like areas you've spent more time in your music journey and learning. But we all have our kind of weaknesses that we want to bring up or kind of put our energy into focusing on. Sight reading, yeah, that's a popular one. Memory, performance, yeah, we've got some opportunities for you guys to get up and play. Sight singing, ooh, that's a really good one. Being able to look at something on the page and know how it sounds and sing it out, then you don't have the logistical nightmares of working out what to do with your fingers. Theory, that's a good one. Good. Collaboration, playing with other people and other things. Good. That is the theme of this year's concert for those of you who didn't know that yet. Anything else? I'm curious. Improv. Ooh, very good. Yep. Being able to make up some stuff. That's important. And noodle around with that. Anything else? Again, giving you a moment. Yeah, I'll let those roll in, keep rolling. I'd like to go back to older pieces after taking time off. It always feels good to go back to pieces and realize how much more I can do. Yes, that's such a cool skill, isn't it? To be able to, have a piece that you probably grappled and struggled with for months and months, and you put it away for 6 months or 12 months or longer to marinate, and then you finger yoga. That's great. You come back to it and then you realize you have so much more skill than when you first learnt it, and something that was just about impossible before and you managed to survive, then you're like, oh, I'm all over this. This is great. Okay, so moving on here. So now the other thing that gets in people's way a lot when it comes to practicing is they just say, I just have absolutely no time. How on earth can I practice, right? And it is unfortunate. It's like one of those busy worlds that we live in now, but we do have choices around certain things and how busy and how we allocate our time. So for those of you who feel the time pressure and how to squeeze practice in, there is always a way. So we have to make time. It's a little bit like we've just got to carve it out. Unfortunately, it's a little bit like brushing your teeth. You've just got to do it. And even if it's not particularly long, I wonder if you could let me know what sort of activities could you substitute for practice, if there's anything that you find yourself kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't go as far as saying wasting time on, but if you've got a default few minutes here or there, like what would your kind of go-to be, and what could you substitute that with? Like, well, what could you substitute that activity? What is that activity you would substitute instead of practice? Any ideas? Cleaning. Yeah, I think it's always nice if you can get a cleaner or outsource that somehow, or delegate someone else in your household. Take it in turns. I'll play the piano, you go clean my house. That's lovely. Short bursts of time. Yeah, I think we all get short bursts of time. And we can definitely put them to use. I always find like, yeah, fit in little bits. That's right. I always find that, if you've got those couple of dead minutes before you're about to leave the house or something, like if you're waiting on someone else in the household particularly, that's always a good moment to just kind of jump on the piano and just play a few notes. Always good. You don't necessarily have to do practice in long chunks. What about things like social media? Sometimes that can be one of those things that you just think, oh, I'm just going to like scroll on my phone for a minute. Yeah, that's a nice little one. Doom scrolling. Yeah, exactly. Waiting for the microwave. Yes. Just make sure it's definitely the microwave and not something on the stove. I'm notorious for putting on the pasta and forgetting about it and walking away and going, I smell smoke. My kitchen is on fire. Never good. So microwaves are right, because I generally have a stop button. They automatically stop. Rice cookers are okay for that too. Good. Okay, so there's a few ideas in there that you guys could possibly look at switching up to make a little bit more practice time in your day. And the other thing that I find is it's useful not only when you can grab those little sort of moments in the day, but to actually create a routine. And like every routine, it's it takes, I don't know, what is it, 21 days or something for it to stick and build a habit. But if you can find something that you know like, or that you can associate the activity with practicing. So say after you finish brushing your teeth, you're going to go play for 5 minutes, or I don't know, it's something to do with maybe yeah, your breakfast, or something, you know. I quite like to do that as well when I have my morning cup of tea. I don't want to rush having my cup of tea, but I can kind of alternate those things. It's always nice. So yeah, finding something that you can associate it with as well as substitute. It's always good. And then when we sit down and practice, it's not just a case of, I'm going to play now. It's like, you know, you actually have to have a plan. And I think it was Benjamin Franklin, and I think Winston Churchill also had a variation of this quote, but failing to plan is planning to fail. And today's session, we'll be talking a little bit more about how to actually set up a practice plan and the kind of things that you need to be thinking about with that. So goal setting is very much a part of this, and that's another reason I thought I'd get you guys to kind of reflect on the skills outside of just learning the pieces, because you know, they all sort of come together to sort of form your interests. And there's another quote that really rings true to me, that you know, you can have anything, but you can't have everything. Something to that effect. I'm probably paraphrasing it really poorly, but it's as you can see, there are so many different sort of elements of learning music, right? Unfortunately, we don't have time to do everything, so you have to get really super specific about what it is that you are particularly wanting to focus on. So, and making sure that you're goal setting in ways that serve that purpose. So, what are the things that you're going to do in the short term to enable your long-term goals with what you're trying to be able to play or what you're trying to be able to do, and then being able to reflect on that and rinse and repeat that process. So examples of some short-term goals might be things like, I'd like to be able to play this one line smoothly without errors. And again, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Generally, shorter term goals are shorter kind of processes in themselves. Again, depends on your level, how long you've been playing for, what your complexity of your pieces are, and how you learn. And this is something we can help you as teachers to tweak over time. It might be something like, I want to be able to play my C major, my F major, my D major scale over 2 octaves. And that would be a totally valid short-term goal to be able to do. And you probably find you'd be able to get through that fairly quickly and then reset that later on. So short-term goals should literally be only for the short term. They shouldn't take you more than a week or two, perhaps. And they're things that we update and review quite regularly. Or being able to just record this short snippet. Again, it could be a line, it could be a few bars, and listen back and reflect. And that could be your goal for that particular practice session or that week. So then we have the longer term goals. So things like, I'd like to be able to play this entire Beethoven sonata from memory. Whew, depending on which sonata it is, that can be quite a big project, and you need to be able to kind of reverse engineer that and break that down into smaller steps, and then, you know, go back to the short-term goals. It might be that you're working towards a particular grade exam and you want to be able to complete that, however long that process takes. Again, you break it down into smaller bits, but it's important to kind of have that pinnacle out in the ether of what it is that you want to actually be able to achieve. And then I want to be able to sight read, you know, competently without looking at my hands at all. That could be another great sort of long-term goal. Then these are some specific ones that I've had myself and I have conquered over time. Otherwise, you know, I wouldn't be practicing what I preach here. So, and then we have the whole reflection process. So I find it's nice if you can, if you have like a practice journal, or, you know, it's nice to actually document these things. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It could just be, you know, bog standard exercise book, or if you're a digital being, you might have a favorite note-taking program or something that you might want to keep these things in. That's kind of nice too, because you can attach recordings and whatever, but just depends, whatever you're more comfortable with, whatever's more convenient that you're likely to access easily and use often. And the sorts of questions you want to be asking yourself during your practice is like, what sort of things did you decide to work on in that session? So if you're just focusing on one particular session that you're working with, and then did they serve your goals? So again, being really clear about what it is, the outcome and the that you're trying to achieve in your goals, and then did whatever you're working on actually serve that and get you closer to that? And then what did you actually accomplish in that session? Was it what you set out to do, or did you get kind of sidetracked and just start playing something else, or it didn't quite go to plan? And then what went well, what didn't work, are you stuck with this particular problem? If you've been stuck with it over a few days or whatever, this is a perfect moment to just kind of make a note of it or highlight it and bring it to your next lesson. And this is exactly our job as teachers, is to help you guys problem solve. You know, it's a little bit like going to the doctor, and you wouldn't just kind of rock up and be like, hey, how's it going? Oh yeah, good. And then, you know, how's your week? You might have a bit of chit chat, but you know, it's the more specific. If you're like, I've hurt my leg or something, like, how do I go about sorting this out, or what do I need to take, or, you know, what are the actions I need to do? The more you can be prescriptive with that and self-diagnose in your own practice sessions, the more you'll get out of your lessons and the quicker you will progress. So the more you can reflect on this process and be self-aware, the more progress you will make. And then lastly, what will you focus on for your next practice session based on all these previous questions? And that will really guide where you're going with all of that. Okay, so defining your outcomes. Now, I want you guys again to get on the chat for me, and we're going to look at each of these outcomes here, and some of them are absolute gumph, and I want you to tell me which ones are kind of more effective practice strategies. So if you want to just kind of put down the numbers of what you think. So play this piece for 10 minutes non-stop again and again. Is that an effective practice outcome? I don't know. Play this one line of music accurately 3 times in a row. That seems like a pretty solid kind of thing. Play my old songs on loop and stop learning anything new. Who needs to learn anything new? That'll do. I've got my songs, and I'll just keep polishing them. They're already shiny, but shiny car syndrome. And I'll just be able to play this one bar from memory with my eyes closed. That seems like a kind of valid-ish thing. Or just practice. Like, what do you need to do? What's your outcome today? Just practice. What are you actually practicing? And play a scale as fast as you can. Doesn't matter if it's accurate. So which ones would you say, which numbers are the sort of valid outcomes, do you think, or most effective practice ones? Just pop that in the chat for me. Yeah, 2 and 4, they're pretty solid. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think we got a bit of an agreement. Some of these other ones are kind of a bit non-specific, aren't they? So you can see, you know, quite often when I ask students, you know, what do you need to do with this passage? Oh, I just need to practice more. It's like, well, that's not very specific. What is it about that you actually need to practice? So, good. So, and then eating elephants. I mean, that would be ghastly if we did have to actually eat an elephant. But if you're aware of that parable of, you know, what if you had to eat an elephant, how would you go about it? One bite at a time. So especially when you're looking at these longer term goals and you're trying to reverse engineer, what do I need to do in the shorter term to be able to reach that? And it could be something completely enormous. Like I remember that when I was, for example, learning my recital program for my final university leaving exams, and we had to play a 50-minute recital from memory, and that's a lot of music to learn from memory, and it was all very difficult. And they give you a year to kind of break this up, and you think, well, how on earth am I going to do this? And you think, okay, well, this month I'm just going to focus on like these 2 of these 6 pieces or whatever. And then, you know, I need to make sure that by the time I get to this particular month, I can do these particular ones from, you know, comfortably from memory, and then breaking it down. And that means generally also going and thinking, okay, I need to kind of tackle the biggest, chunkiest thing first, while my motivation is fresh and strong and my brain is kind of at its peak, so that it's also got the longest digestion time. So yes, you just need to go for one bite at a time, and hopefully not eating anything as barbaric as an elephant. Let's stick to soup or noodles or something much better. So the other way you can track your practice, you know, it's probably not quite as, I don't know, wholesome, I suppose, or I wouldn't go as far as say effective, but if it's useful, is to just kind of have an app, something like Toggle Track, which is a little time tracker, and you could just put in like C major scale or Beethoven first page or whatever, and then it's easy to just kind of hit play on these ones as you go in, and it will it'll just kind of record the time of how long you're spending on it, and then it'll give you a nice pretty report by email at the end of the week to just kind of see how long did I actually spend on these things. And sometimes just tracking the time will be helpful to see how much time did I actually sink into this. Is it making a difference? So that's another way if you want to get kind of techie about it. or you can just do that manually, keep an eye on the clock. However, a note on time, practice is not measured, it's measured in outcomes, not in minutes. So it's not effective to go, I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes or half an hour, whatever, and just kind of play whatever. Again, you want to go into that practice session with the time you've got and be like, you then have to kind of reverse engineer that and go, I only have 10 minutes right now. What am I trying to achieve in this 10 minutes? So again, it's not just set the clock and kind of turn your brain off and go, oh yeah, I got to the end of my half an hour and then leave. No, that's not the way we approach it. So again, keeping this, I say this all the time in lessons, you guys are probably so sick of me saying this, but making sure that you always start with accuracy as your kind of primary objective in whatever you're trying to play. Because if you're accurate, you will feel confident and then you can add speed into the equation. If you start off by going too fast too soon, it's probably not going to be particularly accurate and you're probably not going to feel very good about it. And then you can't go any faster necessarily. So always go from a premise of accuracy. And recording yourself is a really useful tool as well. So it can be quite daunting and confronting. However, we all have these smart devices literally just at our fingertips nowadays. It's very simple to just hit the voice memos on or whatever and hit record. You may have something a little more elaborate, but whatever it is, just make sure it's simple and accessible, because there is nothing better than to actually hear back in sort of, objective terms what you've actually just accomplished. Because sometimes when you're sitting here and you're exhausting all of your kind of brain power and just trying to execute the skill, it's very hard to kind of sit back and listen, so to speak, at the same time. And that's something that gets better over time. But yeah, sometimes you don't necessarily pick things up when you're in the moment playing versus when you're sitting back and actually listening. So unfortunately, we don't have detachable ears yet. I don't know, maybe one day we'll be bionic and that can be a possibility. But yeah, being able to record is so important. Although just a few reminders around that, it's obviously a way to give yourself objective feedback and track your progress. It's also nice in many ways to like record yourself at the start of a learning process with any new piece, and then listen back to it like a few weeks down the track and go, oh, I actually did make progress. Because sometimes when you hear yourself play the same thing every day, you don't necessarily realize these little increments of progress that you make. And as teachers, we tend to see you generally once, twice, maybe 3 times a week, but that's not literally every day, every minute of your practice with you, unfortunately. I'd love to be able to kind of do that, but there's not enough hours in the day. But we hear with that space between sessions of how much progress you've actually made. And generally the longer the space between lessons, we tend to hear more progress. Unless you haven't practiced at all, that's a different story. But yeah, it's nice to be able to kind of look back if you've done the work and gone, yes, I have actually made progress, and have that as a clear-cut thing. The challenge can be, when you're first starting out and it's messy, it's being able to like just completely put your ego aside and not judge yourself and go, oh my God, it's the most terrible thing. It's shocking. I'm a terrible piano player. I can't do this, right? That is not helpful feedback whatsoever. It's like, okay, what is about this that needs to be improved upon? Maybe I just missed these few notes here, or that was a bit slower here, or a bit scruffy, or that just sounded a little bit clunky somehow. So what do I need to do to make that bit sound smoother? And you probably find that not everything is dreadful. You might find a snippet of it is not quite going to plan. And you've got to work out what is it about that snippet that doesn't make it sound the way I want it to yet. And again, placing that word yet is in the sentence is super important, because that's how we learn, and we know that we've got a goal that we're working towards, and we might not have the tools to get there yet, but that's again why you have lessons. That's why we keep going with the feedback, and the more skilled and experienced you become, the more you can sort of self-diagnose and problem solve these things faster. So, and then the last thing on that point is just making sure that you're hearing exactly what it is and not necessarily worse than it is. So again, being able to just kind of disassociate any kind of judgment and just go, what am I hearing right now? I think that's the most important reminder. And the other thing is when you're listening back to your recordings, and again, this may be helpful to journal while you're listening back. And if you do have sheet music, it's fun. It's kind of fun. I say to sort of highlight. I tend to like to use those little stickers. You guys have seen me use them in the lessons. The little sort of highlighty stickers that you can place on your music and take off and put on, just to sort of highlight the little spots that you need to work on. But just moments of inaccuracy. Is it accurate? Is it controlled? Or is it a little bit scruffy? Do I need to sort that out? Does it flow? If not, where are the hesitations or the gaps or the errors? They're good spots to highlight. And is it a suitable tempo for where I'm at now? Obviously, if it's something brand new, you'll be playing quite under tempo compared to where the composer actually wants this piece to go. And then it will gradually get faster as you become more familiar and skilled with it down the track. And then is it something is it sounding musical? Is it expressive? Does it sound and feel easy yet? And if not, maybe it's a case of it just needs some more digestion time. A lot of the time we can't really pressure cook these things. They need their time to sort of evolve and marinate and do that. Sometimes we can push that process, but it's nice to let these things kind of happen organically in their own time. And if you're practicing effectively, they will happen. So you have to put an element of trust into that process. And also treat your practice sessions as a bit of a lab. I always like to think of it. It's like I sit at the piano for my practice. I'm in the lab now. There is going to be a bit of trial and error. Things are going to blow up, and that's okay. And the faster you fail, the faster you get your valuable feedback to make the corrections. You go, well, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? It's because I forgot to use my third finger here, or I forgot the D sharp or whatever. Like, so that's inevitable. Yes, we aim for accuracy, but expect to make at least a few repetitions of an error, but you don't want to make it too many times because you're literally programming these things and these motor patterns and these notes into the body and into the brain. So if you catch yourself making a mistake more than 2 or 3 times, you need to correct that so that it doesn't become habit, right? So but it is completely normal to to let things blow up, and that's absolutely okay. In which case you need to try something else. If it doesn't quite go to plan, this is where you pull some of the practice tools out of your tool belt, which we'll be talking a lot more about shortly, and we'll be testing some of these soon. So some of them may be more useful for certain contexts than others, and that's okay. And again, they may blow up, but this is how we get the feedback, right? The other thing that I was going to mention is, and I had this chat with a few students today, you could be one of them, but about when in doubt, leave out. So what is absolutely essential when you're learning something new, particularly? Do you need to play every single note there, or can you leave out a hand to start with? Can you leave out a few notes? You might just decide to play the first note of each bar maybe in one hand while the other hand does everything, because it might be too much to do everything at the same time. You might go, okay, I can play these bars. These couple of bars over here look really tricky. I need to take them into my lesson next time, and we need to pull that apart together under supervision. Or are there little ornaments? Are there trills? Are there little kind of, ornamental tidbits that kind of get in my way? Could I leave them out for now just to kind of get the general gist and the flow and understand the meter and the structure and know where these main notes need to go, and then can I put them back in again later because they're not really that essential? And then what other notes aren't really essential? Could you play the chords in blocks if they're broken up or something? Do I really need to play all of them separately right now? So again, just if you're not sure, like, don't feel like you need to follow every note to the T. Like, you can just kind of fill them in bit by bit. So what I have built for all of you lovely people, and you'll be able to access this after this session, is a practice planner. Now, in this practice planner, you have a space to write in the month's goals, what you're hoping to achieve in say the month that you're working on. I mean, hopefully in your practice journal, you've written what your kind of long-term goals are. You've all kind of done that in your goal setting activity for me this year, which is great. And if you need some help in kind of, as I say, reverse engineering this and mapping out what do you need to do this month to be able to achieve that, we can totally help you with that. And then again, taking that a step back and going, well, if I want to be able to do this by this month, like if, for example, you had a 4-page piece of music, I need to be learning 1 page a week, roughly, to be able to do this by the end of this month. If you give yourself those little kind of deadlines, I think that's really useful. And so then, you start with a bigger picture, and then you zoom out into what is yay, Elise loves it. Hopefully you all love this. Yeah, and then hopefully you can zoom out and go, what are the smaller chunks of that I need to do. And I recommend trying not to do too many things at the same time. Like I said, you can do anything, but you can't do everything because there's just not enough hours in the day. That's the reality. We try to like find the little moments extra where we can after we've kind of, plotted that into our routine. But unfortunately, life gets busy, and that is not an excuse in itself, but we also have to face it as a bit of a reality. So try to create a bit of a routine, try to focus on, I'm going to say 4 things. And those 4 things are something to do with technique, whether that be a scale or an exercise, or something like a particular little exercise that you might develop out of a passage, out of one of the pieces that you're trying to play or something. It could be revision of a new piece. I think this is really important because we put so much time and energy into polishing up and learning this new music, and then we get it to a really nice standard, and then if we don't play it again, then that effort's kind of lost in a way, especially if it's something, pieces that you really have enjoyed and loved and want to come back to often. I think it's really important to build that into your repertoire and come back to it often. So just make sure you're taking the time to do that. And it could be, again, that you might have the month's goal of, I want to revisit 2 pieces or something, and then you might alternate them depending on the different days. You might also block out, you go, no, Sunday's not a practice zone, I refuse to practice on Sundays. So try to map out which days you realistically you're going to take off as well. You want to aim to at least get 3 or 4 days of practice in there, depending on where you're at. But the more sessions you can do, sometimes it's better to do shorter sessions but more often, over more days, because then you're not spending the next practice session working out what you did last practice session. So just think about that. And you might not practice each of these elements every day, but you want to try to see to them at least a few times a week. You've got your new piece, which you'll all have a new piece of sorts that you're working towards, and that probably will take the most time, and I recommend that pretty much every day if you can. And then your ancillary skills. So whatever you guys put in the chat today, whatever kind of extra skill, whether you want to devote a little bit of time to, working on your improvisation or your sight reading or something, again, make a point of including that as part of your practice routine and planning it into the schedule. Otherwise, it's just one of those pies in the skies that, you never kind of get around to because you're spending all your time just working on your piece. So we really want you just kind of think outside the box a little bit more with that, because all of those extra skills will build into your pieces as well. So now we have created this practice planner as a PDF. So this will be in the Practice Hacks part of the library, where you'll be able to access not only this recording, but the practice planner and some of the other resources that, for those of you who have been Playwell veterans for a while, you'll be able to go back and look at that. We've added a few updates to it, and we continue to update it depending on feedback and whatever you guys need. And for those of you who have not had much encounter with the library yet, we do have an element devoted to practice, a little segment in there that you can check out. So some people will probably like to print this out. I'd recommend, if you are going to take time to print it, if you can get an A3 version, that's lovely, and then perhaps laminate it, and then you can write things in with a whiteboard marker, and then it's easy for you to kind of rub it out and sort of update it from week to week. And if you're going to do that option, I would recommend, just so you've got a record of what you've done, just take a photo of it at the end of each week before you rub it out and update it for the next one. And then some of you may prefer the digital option. You might want to download a copy of this and just kind of mark in how you want to go about all of these things, and then it's easy for you to sort of scribble out. There is a spreadsheet version of this I've also made and included in the library that you're welcome to download. It doesn't look quite as pretty, but it's practical, and the beauty of the spreadsheet version is you guys can update that live, and you can also have it effectively so that we can see that too. It's easier for us to kind of share and help you update that and whatever. But again, some of you might not look at it so much if it is in a digital format, so perhaps having a physical version of it might suit you better. And some of you might prefer to go a bit old school and just print off a bunch of blankies, and then you might want to bind it into a book. Completely up to you. But the resource is there. You do what you like with it. Just make sure that you do use it because it is helpful. I have designed it to be helpful. I hope. And then the other thing in here, which some of you may remember from last year, we did create a practice tool belt. So you've got these cards that you can print out and snip out. And you're probably wondering what's going on here with the spinny spinnies. We've also made a digital version of this for those of you who use the Decide Now app. I think some of you do and know how that works. So you can, they basically have the same information here. So you may like to cut these out and make like a, have a little kind of hat or a container that you pull them out of when you're looking for certain practice strategies throughout your sessions. We'll talk about each of the different elements on here, and some of them may be more relevant to what you're working on than others, but most of the time you should be able to use these to kind of mix up your practice, because if we just play the same thing again and again, it can get a little bit dull, and yeah, we want to keep it interesting. So let's talk about some of these strategies. So hands separately. I always recommend, and I keep stressing this, and you guys probably all go, ugh, Manny. Start with your left hand first if you're going to do hand separate practice, because the left hand is typically not as melodic, and it's also a little more awkward. And most of us here, I don't think we've got any lefties. We've got a couple of lefties actually, maybe not in the session, but yes, just trust me and do your left hand practice first, because it's not our dominant hand and it needs the extra love for it to be just as competent and automatic as our right hand. So generally start with your left hand practice, do your right hand, do your left hand again, so it gets double the repetitions, take a little break, then do it again, left hand, take a break. And then when it comes to actually putting it together, go through the separate hands one more time, left hand, then try and put it together. Now, can I get a quick opinion in the chat? When we are doing hands separate practice, should we be doing this faster or slower than hands together? Oh, okay. Any other opinions? Faster? So should we be doing separate hands faster or slower than hands together? Whatever you need to get it correct. Okay. Yeah, I'm going with faster here. We seem a little divided, but I'm going to say faster, because generally you only have sort of one thing to think about when you're working on hands separately versus the complexity of putting them hands together. So generally that's another thing too. When you are going through these reps of the hands separately, start slowly, and then the next time you do your next lot of reps after your break, see if you can do that a little bit faster than before, and then see if you can get it almost at speed, or if you've had it for a while and then it's not one of those things that we set and forget and then do hands separately and then we never bother again. But just yeah, see if you can get that left hand at speed, if not faster, left hand and right hand I should say separately, before you put that together, because again, you don't require anywhere near as much cognitive load to do that. So when you go hands together, I've kind of already answered that question, making sure that you're doing that much slower than you would be if you're doing it hands separately. Okay. The metronome, always interesting when you've got cats, but metronome practice is one of those things that, you know, can be a little bit painful, but again, it keeps us honest, it keeps things in time, and playing music in time and in the right rhythm is what makes music make sense. You know, you can play the same notes with the wrong rhythm and it will sound like a completely different song. If you play the wrong notes with the right rhythm, it'll actually sound more like the song. So I've demonstrated that before. I won't waste time doing that. Slow practice, again, it can be painful, but you know, how slow can you go? There's no such thing as playing too slowly. I think it's important to, you know, spend a lot of time in slow practice, because when you're playing slowly, you have the ability to control things. You know, it's like the rally car driver. They will generally walk around the track before they get in their Ferraris and drive at a million miles an hour, so they don't smash into a wall or something, because they work out where all the little twists and turns and niggles are, so that they're you know, not going to crash, primarily. And then when you're playing at speed, it depends where you're at in the learning process of whatever you're trying to work on at that particular moment. If you find that it's too much to do like a whole page, can you just do half a page at speed? If that's too much, can you do one line? If one line is too much, can you do a couple of bars? If 2 bars is too much, can you do like 1 bar? Can you do half a bar? Right? It's always, again, breaking it down into what's possible, rather than, this kind of getting faster, getting slower, like all over the place with your speed. So you want your speed ultimately to be consistent, and it's the same idea of doing marathons versus sprints, right? So a marathon is over a short distance, a long distance, but at a slower speed, and then a sprint being able to go fast over a shorter distance. So exactly the same principle applies in music and when you're learning music. Okay, so that's another good one. Doing backwards practice. So what do I mean by that? Let's take this little snippet of Ode to Joy over here. So I'm actually going to start with the last bar of this snippet here. But you go, okay, that's fine. And then I'm going to go to the second last bar. And then the third last bar. So and then the fourth last bar, etc. Etc., etc., and then you sort of keep working your way back depending on the piece. It could be quite long if you say learning a Beethoven sonata. I'm very focused on Beethoven today. I don't know why. I think a few of you have played me some Beethoven today. Anyway, yeah, the idea is that by being able to kind of pick up anywhere, you're speeding up your recall and being able to just be able to do that. So that's really important if you're playing away and you have like a memory slip or whatever, and you're able to just kind of pick up anywhere in the piece. But it also gives you confidence knowing that you've just played what's coming next, so you know what's going to happen. You're anticipating it, and then you're seeing slightly different relationships. So that's a really useful way to practice as well. Being able to play super softly or even silently. So if you were to play without making any sound whatsoever, can you play that? And can you still hear the music in your mind whilst you're feeling just the surface of the keys? And then I'm going to call it silent plus. Is like, if I was playing that Ode to Joy again, this is silent play. You can probably just hear my fingers tapping. And then silent plus might be like, barely audible, but just that little bit more than silent, so that we can just hear it. I got very good at this when back in the days of landlines, and my folks would be on the phone, and I would be practicing in the lounge room, trying not to disturb anyone, because unfortunately the piano is not like a flute. You can't just kind of pick it up and move it into another room. Well, these digital ones, they're a little bit more built for that, but nonetheless, there's just something really useful about learning to play without control. But yeah, you just play as if you had someone else in the room that you didn't want to bother or disturb. And then you want to be able to do the complete opposite, because again, you're practicing control, technical control here. Even if it's marked as a loud piece, try and do the complete opposite, and then vice versa. If it's if you can play something super loud and confidently, I think that's also a useful skill, so that you're practicing kind of both extremes, and then it's easy for you to temper it and bring it back to the middle with what's actually written on the page if you're following that. So being able to play the wacky rhythm, I'm sticking with Ode to Joy just for sort of continuity's sake here. So you might play with like a bouncy swingy rhythm. Not the rhythm that was actually originally there. Or you might go for, say, a tango rhythm. Then you might have a touch on the end or something. You might add little wacky things in there if you wanted to. Or you might do, I like the stop slow practice, or not necessarily stop slow, but being able to stop and then kind of like hold the first note of each bar and then go quick on the next bit. So again, you're mixing it up. It's not necessarily the way it needs to sound, but it's teaching your hands different reflexes, and again, practicing control and flexibility, and putting that in there. So different ways you can incorporate some wacky rhythms into your practice. Being able to play for someone, you don't need to be able to play for old Simon Crean, but you know, I've got a couple of students who've enlisted their neighbors as their kind of designated listening buddy. And do you have someone in your house that, you know, you're happy to play for, warts and all, even if it's like, again, breaking it down to, I'm just going to play like this one line and I just need to develop my confidence in playing for other people. But that's a really important skill to be able to do that, because it's interesting, once you put yourself under the pump in a performance situation, whether that be for one person or 1,000, it's amazing what the brain will do under pressure, and things that go perfectly well in your practice go completely out of your brain when you suddenly know there's a second set of eyeballs and ears listening, right? So there's a lot to be said about that, and also giving you the feedback about what it is that you actually need to work on, what's not as secure as you necessarily thought it was, because it can be just ticking away absolutely smoothly in your own practice time, but until you actually go and play that for someone else, you don't necessarily know what has stuck and what's unflappable versus what's going to crumble in a heap. So I seriously encourage that. Again, it's like recording. You just got to put your ego aside and go, okay, I'm not sure what state this is in, but I need a guinea pig and a set of ears to kind of test this on. So and again, the beauty about music is it doesn't matter if you get something wrong. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You might play a few wrong notes. It just sounds funny. No one dies. It's okay. Being able to practice with your eyes closed. So again, giving yourself little challenges, work with snippets if you must for now, but there's something really special about being able to play with your eyes closed. You hear things differently. They just sound, you just notice every tiny detail. But again, this depends on being able to know your music sort of inside out and have the memory test. And that's why I know memory is definitely one of those things on the agenda of ancillary skills that some of you would like to work on. And again, it's like a muscle. You've got to build it up bit by bit. So I would encourage you to just work with smaller chunks, and as you strengthen that skill, then you can work with slightly bigger ones. But yeah, being able to play with your eyes closed it's a really wonderful skill to be able to do that. You know, blindfold is optional if you find yourself peeking, but good test. Now this practice technique may be more relevant for certain pieces than others, but if you've got something like this, if you look at this left hand, so if you look at all of these different notes here, really there's only 3 notes. There's an A, there's a C, there's an E, and rather than playing them all separately like that, you could play them all together in one chord. So you're sort of summarizing this, 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 and this, and really then you end up seeing that it's actually the same chord 4 times in a row with the etc. So you can go through and sort of block out things like that, so you don't necessarily have to play all of the notes. Especially this is useful at the beginning of your learning journey, and for those of you who are looking at improving your harmonic analysis and your chord knowledge and your theory, being able to go, oh, okay, it's just A minor chords. I can see that, but they're just sort of broken up here in this pattern. The other thing that you can block is scales. So, you know, if you're taking, say, a C scale, nice and simple, but being able to teach your hand the shapes of, it's this group of 3 notes and then this group of 5 notes, or if you do it over multiple octaves, this group of 3, this group of 4, this group of 3, this group of 5. So again, you're teaching your brain to find the smallest chunks of information as possible. So rather than saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 notes, you're going, it's just 4 shapes, and then I break them all up. Okay, so again, condensing the amount of information that the brain needs to actually process, and that will be able to help you play things much faster and efficiently, because there's just less getting in your way to think about. Being able to play without pedal. For those of you who are playing pieces with pedal, there's a lot to be said about practicing without pedal. Sometimes we can use the pedal as a security blanket to kind of hide our mistakes or the finger work that's not as tidy as it could be yet. Again, yet being the important word in the sentence. So you could tie your foot to the piano stool if you're feeling really particular about that, if it keeps gravitating towards. But yeah, it's useful to do a little bit of work without the pedal first, just to kind of teach your hands and your ear to sort of hear what does it sound like when it's really clean and tidy before I put that back in. And then being able to play on a tabletop. This is a useful skill for, can you again see and hear and imagine every note. You could use the lap as well as the tabletop if you like. Just again, this eliminates the need to necessarily have to practice at your piano, because you might find that you have a few minutes when you're sitting around, but you don't necessarily have the like you don't have the instrument nearby, right? Or little things while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, you can practice on the bench there or something, right? So just finding those little opportunity moments. And it also just really helps you solidify, like, oh, have I got a good oral memory of how this sounds? Do I really know the notes here? This is excellent for memory work as well. And sometimes you end up in situations where you don't have an instrument and you really need one to do your practice. Well, you think you need one, but actually you don't. So, oh, and then the pen game. This one's a fun one for those of you who have or haven't played this one before. So you take your little snippet of music, you take a pen, you start with a pen on the left-hand side of your piano, you nail it, and then you level up. This can be an infuriating game. Some of you have played this and know that it is, but it's, you're in it to win it. So if you nailed it, you move it up, and then if you get it right, I've got it right again, then you move it over one more time to the right. Can I do it again? Oops, needs to go back to the left. You do it again. You do it one more time accurately. Then you can karate chop it off the piano, which is so fun. I don't know, you're never too old to have fun with these sorts of games. There's always pens flying around my house. Mosaic practice, I'm just going to fly through these. So this is where you have like a few things that, again, you might be focusing on 3 of those different parts of your practice planner that day. So you might have, 2 pieces and a little chord thing that you're working on, and you want to be able to kind of bounce between those things. So you might give yourself a limit of, I'm only going to allow myself to play each of these things once. And then I'm going to swap over to whatever the other element is. And again, you're practicing your recall, you're purposely forgetting and then having to pick it up again. And if you can go through that cycle like 2 or 3 times in a session, then you'll find that it will actually stick a lot better than if you were just kind of sitting there hammering away at one thing and sort of getting to the groove with that, because that can tend to make you fall asleep a bit, but this keeps you on your toes a little. You can set yourself a 3-minute challenge. So, stick a timer on for 3 minutes, and, you have, you want to see how many times you can play, say, if you're working on scales or something, how many times can I play this scale accurately in 3 minutes? You may modify that to be 2 minutes or 1 minute or whatever, depending on what it is. But try to keep it in short snippets and be, again, very clear with what the outcome is that you're actually trying to achieve in that particular space of time. Hands reversed, this is a great one. So, if you've got a right hand part and you play it in your left hand instead, or vice versa, that shows you if you really understand what you're doing there, right, with that music. Just kind of play them back to front. I would advise just make sure you move your body up or down the piano accordingly to do that. That's always useful. There is a card in there that says to do it again. So whatever last activity or practice hack you were using, just do that one again. You can never get enough repetitions. Repetition is the mother of all skills. Memory, we've talked about that a lot today. So again, giving yourself those little like deliberate tests of, oh, can I just do this like 1 bar, and that can be useful too, particularly if you've got a technical challenge that you're working with, and you need a moment to actually like look at your hands rather than, what's actually all this fly poo on the page here, but what's going on with my hands? How can I find that nice and smoothly? Okay, I'm going to try that with my eyes closed now. I've got that from memory. And then you can come back and can I do it without looking at my hands? And can I do that again now looking at the music, right? So giving yourself those little tests. There is a retire card in there. So, that's a nice one to put in there. If you feel like you've done enough of these practice challenges for the day, or you pull that one out, you can reserve that for when you think, I've had enough for today. That'll do. So homework, just to wrap up for this session, you're going to sign up to the practice hacks section of the library. If you have already, just sign in via the link, and I'm going to send you guys all that link again a bit later on. But I'll also stick it in the chat at the end of the session. It doesn't cost you anything. It's part of your subscription as Playwell here. Once you get in there, make sure that you download your practice planner in whatever chosen format you think is going to suit you the best. And then also those tool belt cards, or if you want to use the Decide Now app version, then you can do that too. And then get cracking on your practice. So the last thing is also just ask your teacher for feedback as you're going through this planning process. We're happy to sit down and actually go through and kind of assess those goals and whether you guys we think what you've chosen is kind of effective things to focus on, or just to help you tweak it a little bit. The language of how you write these little goals out can be really useful, as we discovered when we were looking at defining the outcomes, just making sure that they're really specific, and that particularly that the short-term goals are serving your longer-term ones. So just take the time to fill it out before your next lesson, and share it with us. You know, if you've gone the old school version, just take a happy snap and text it through to us, or send us an email. Or if you're using the Digi version, just make sure that we've got access to the same link as well. But just, yeah, we're here to help. We're here to give you the feedback. That's why you come to lessons, right? As well as many other things. So do we have any questions, I wonder? And if we do, I wonder if you wanted to possibly unmute yourself. Any questions, any feedback, any comments, any snide remarks? I'm open to any of these things. If you prefer to type in the chat, otherwise we look forward to seeing how you go in the next session.
Just Annie.
Yes.
How long, like if you practice, say, just for the sake of an average half an hour a day,
yes,
would you spend 10 minutes at the beginning of the week setting these goals, and then 10 minutes at the end of the week reviewing them, or do you do a bit every day, or what do you do?
Well, I think there's definitely an element of planning, like putting the time aside to actually plan your next week of practice, I think. So you might find that that's not necessarily at the start or the end of the week. It's finding a time that mutually fits for you to do that and map it out. But yeah, it shouldn't take you more than sort of 5 or 10 minutes. If you're really clear, I mean, you might find it'll take you a little bit more time to actually think about what are your longer term goals and your outcomes. But then again, reverse engineering that, you shouldn't take more than about 10 minutes or so really to fill that in. And then you may just, depending if you've only got that half an hour or whatever to spare each day for your practice, it's that might be a good thing to discuss with your teacher, what those specific goals are and how you might break that down. And you'll refine that over time, and you'll get a lot better at that. Any other questions? I'm having a rest while listening to you. That's okay. This is lovely. This is multitasking at its finest. So if there's no further questions, then that's absolutely fine. No stress. I will. I'm just gonna. Last thing I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna pop that link in the chat here if you guys wanted to copy that in before we wrapped up. I think a lot of you will already be part of this library already, and if you haven't, then just jump on and sign up, and you'll be able to find all the resources that we discussed today in there. Otherwise, if you're stuck, let us know. We're more than happy to flick you an email. But thank you all so much for coming and taking an hour to spend with me on this Friday afternoon. I always love hanging out, and hopefully you got something out of it. And look forward to seeing you next lesson. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, Annie. That was great.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
Weekend.
Yeah, thank you too. Thanks, guys. Bye. See ya.
Thanks a lot, Annie.
Thanks so much, Rod. See you next time.
See ya.
See ya.